Hello and welcome everybody to the episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host Shwin and this is episode 517. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPan89 on Twitter. Stacy, how you doing?
Doing pretty well.
Good to hear, and I am also doing pretty well. Enjoying the off season and the relative respite from NBA news that we have, but we do have stuff to discuss which we will get to. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, being that Strickland has a huge YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and have not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. That'd be huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise which you can find on our website at www.thestrict.land. There's a link to our merchandise store, and there's all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's $6 tier that gives you access to Pod Strickland's podcast I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Text Marcus Boso's podcast, hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. So, for the tiers, is a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, a pod that I host with YC, where we rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to one of our premium articles by Matthew Brenda, one of the best in the business, and you get access to Strickland NFL, which you guessed it is a podcast with the NFL that hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers: a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and potentially go into a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe. None of this would be possible without you, and none of this would be possible without our newest sponsor. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, so shout out to them. Since we last talked, Mikal Bridges signed an extension, 4 years, $150 million. I don't have any strong takes about this. I think it's completely fine. It's about more or less where I expected his number to come in. He took a $6 million haircut on the deal, something I wish I had the option to do at some point in my life. So he does save the Knicks a little bit less than the full max, which can help them on the margins. We'll see what that all amounts to as we continue forward. But yeah, I don't know. I guess just what were your thoughts when you kind of saw this pop up?
Yeah, I mean, the 6 million thing seems like Brock Aller work, right? Just you can get another guy. On, I believe a min, right? You can that allows you room for a min.
I think for next year, yeah, I might, yeah.
And so that 6 million, you don't look at it, but it matters. And I mean, they were not going to not extend him after they traded 5 picks. So I think the people who have backlash towards this, it's more that, but you have to view that as a sunk cost at this point. Now, if there was a trade where you can get more for him, you look at that. There's been enough smoke where I think they're trying to somehow keep the Giannis door open. There's definitely, I think, the timing of it gives them some breathing room before the trade deadline. So if they wanted to move him this year, they could. I don't think that was a coincidence. And while we're talking cap, the coincidence, right? But he's also just, I think, part of why I don't want to say it's polarized, but there's been mixed reactions on it. Particularly from outside the Knicks verse. And I think a big part of that is he's a very weird player to evaluate. His wing size doesn't get to the rim. He is streaky as a shooter, better from the corners, has been experimenting with his release really since he got to the league. Can dribble and create his own shot, isn't the best playmaker. He's a very versatile and useful defender. I do think a lot of people underestimate how important he was, particularly in that Celtics series, with being able to switch, with being able to, we complain a lot about his point of attack defense, but he gives you a guy who can do that. But he also, and sometimes point of attack means you need a 6'7" guy if it's Cade, right? But he struggles with screen navigation, right? So he's a very weird player to evaluate. I think there's definitely more they can squeeze out of him. I do wonder, now that he's gotten his contract, is he going to be a little bit more willing to seek out contact? Is he going to, I don't think he'll ever be Brunson or something like that. But we saw, very like career low by outlier almost free throw rate and rim percentage of shots at the rim. I would expect that to tick up. The offense will be a little bit more democratic. I mean, I would imagine, given everything they've been saying, given that the fact that they moved on from Tibbs to begin with, I think that was probably, if not the biggest factor, a big factor. So ultimately, I don't think they had a choice. They spent the picks. You can't just punt on Mikal or let it go to free agency next year. He's just he's a very unique player to evaluate. I think that's what's causing a lot of the mixed reactions.
Yeah, I would definitely kind of co-sign most of that. I think it's also important to remember, like, the Knicks I think it's, look, you can concoct, maybe there are players you might be like, okay, well, maybe we could have used Mikal in a trade to get this guy, should have explored his trade market, whatever. Look, the Knicks FanDuel has them at plus 850 to win the championship this year. They're the third favorite in the league. They are behind Oklahoma City, which is at plus 230, and Cleveland at plus 750. Like, when you're this close, and I mean, again, like, it's weird because I feel like the way last season gets framed, it's constantly talked about this as this like epic disappointment. And I understand that. I'm not trying to like downplay anybody who's upset that they lost in the conference finals, but they did make it to the conference finals. They were 2 wins away from the NBA finals, and they lost to a team that pushed Oklahoma City the distance, right? They pushed Oklahoma City to 7 games.
And that was with their star player having a pretty debilitating injury that sideline.
Right. And but like, when you're that close, it's just important to not take steps back. And like, they still have the opportunity to trade Mikal Bridges down the line. I would suggest that he's way more valuable now as a trade asset than he would be as an expiring heading into the season. So you kind of had to extend him even just from an asset management perspective. But they were careful about how they did it, right? They extended him on, July 31st, which means that he can be traded on January 31st, or is trade eligible starting January 31st up until the trade deadline, which is at February 5th. So they have a little window in season where if something opens up, they could move him. And, we know that the Knicks are constantly evaluating their options under this front office. They've been proactive in terms of getting ahead of things. We know that almost for about, like a year and a half, almost 2 years prior to actually trading Emmanuel Quickley, they were seeing what his market was. They were seeing what his value was in trade. So I think that should give you an idea of, just because they extend somebody doesn't mean that they're going to be, lifelong Knicks, right? I mean, again, in the Quickley, when Quickley went out the door, who went with him? RJ Barrett, a player they extended. So, do I think that they like having Mikal Bridges? Yeah, I definitely do. I think they value him. I think they probably believe that the best of what they can expect from him is yet to come, and that he will be better under Mike Brown, maybe better a year removed from the trade, right? Which was kind of how every conversation about him last year was framed, right? Around 5 first-round picks, 5 first-round picks, 5
we know these guys are online, right? So
yeah. So I mean, that pressure weighs on you. And like, I think I would bet that he has a better season. But I also would say that, like, to me, I think Mikal Bridges is a player who, as good as he is also a player because of that. He kind of exists in this sweet spot of, like, he is a very good player, but you probably will always have a feeling you could do better than him. And for that reason, like I don't think he would be off the board in trade talks, especially for a certain caliber of players, right? Like we know that, first of all, I just gotta say that any report that's like, oh, the Knicks are keeping an eye on Giannis Antetokounmpo, no fucking shit, dude. So are 28 other NBA teams that don't have Giannis on their roster. Like everybody's keeping an eye on Giannis. Like that's natural. Um, but like if that opportunity arises, then yeah, I think Mikal Bridges would be available in a trade such as that. And I think there are probably players. I mean, not probably. There are players I'm confident that are not of the caliber of Giannis Antetokounmpo that they would definitely still consider moving Mikal Bridges for. So given all of that, like the fact that they, like you mentioned, they did give up all the picks for him. The fact that the Knicks are a contender as constructed, whatever their deficiencies may be. And given that, like, you want to have as much ammo as possible in trades, this was kind of like a no brainer extension to me. If anything, the surprise was probably that it didn't happen a little bit sooner. But they got sick. They got him to take 6 million off the total. I don't know how long of a negotiation this really was. I don't know if this had been done for a while, and they held off on making it official for whatever reason.
Let
But
me ask you this, actually, kind of a little bit of a tangent. Sorry. I think you're a little bit more familiar with kind of the inner workings of how these front offices work. It is the summer; people are going on vacation and all of that. So we think like, why isn't it done already? But at most workplaces, you see that in the summer things slow down a bit. Is that part of why some things take a little bit longer, or are they just like, nah, we'll get on the phone to get something like this done, even if you're on Barcelona or Greece or something?
um, yeah, I would think that. I mean, I do think that like there is an element of August is kind of a dead month for the NBA, and guys just want like shit to be over with. Um, it's kind of like, hey, let's handle all family business here, and then let's get the fuck out for a month. But like, yeah, I mean, I think even with that though, like we've seen just in the last, like, what was it, 3 summers ago, which God, that feels like forever ago. But 3 summers ago, the Knicks kind of had to sit through an uncomfortable August because you had the Donovan Mitchell thing just kind of looming over everything, and that didn't get finalized until what, like Labor Day weekend or something like that. So, and then last year, like again, I think the Knicks and most teams, this is not unique to the Knicks, went like you go away in August and then kind of come back, trickle back in through September. But as we know, the Knicks made a huge trade on the cusp of going to training camp last year. So, I don't, I'm sure if there is business that needs to get done, there's always ways to do it. Obviously, like the way our world is connected means that you can always get things done. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of this is kind of like, let's just get this over with here, and we can all enjoy what's left of our summer. And I'll see you in September at training camp going on. Another guy did get extended, which I did want to talk about before we get into our awesome segment, which is that Kyron Williams. No, I don't care about Kyron Williams extension. But no,
Running backs matter, apparently, though. He's the next Saquon.
That is kind of interesting, though, right? Like it's like now. I mean, it started with, I want to say, a couple years ago, right, where it was like, I guess last year, where Saquon signed and Henry signed and what Jacobs signed. Jacobs went to the Packers, right, and then who else? Who else moved? The Vikings got fucking, who is it?
No.
From
You,
they signed somebody from the Packers, didn't they?
it wasn't Montgomery. Was it Montgomery?
I don't know. Whatever. The point is, though, it's kind of interesting that like running backs are now becoming, I wouldn't say they're becoming like highly valued again, but they are definitely more in vogue than they were like 1 or even 2 years ago, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit like having an off-ball shooter, right? So if you're a stagnant team, like I think this is what you've said a little bit about the Magic, right? If you get Bane, but you don't have creation, you don't have all of those things, and he is your spacing, it's less valuable, right? So if Saquon is on the Giants, not to take another shot at the Giants,
No, but it's like
He
it's
is your
just
running
a
game.
fact. Yeah, it's a fact.
It's just very limited value add. But you put him on, the best offensive line in the league, then so I don't know how good I don't know how good some of these other offensive lines are, but I think it's like if you have that, then yeah, that's where a running back becomes valuable, right? So
yeah, I mean it's kind of like you almost shouldn't. It's a weird thing, but it's like you almost shouldn't pay a running back if your offensive line is not at a certain level, because you're not going to get the like the whole idea, right? Is like Saquon can take a 15-yard run and turn it into a 70-yard run. But like you're not even going to get those opportunities if you're not behind a good enough offensive line. So you need to have a good offensive line at a certain level to get that to kind of get the value for the premium you're paying. Anyway, I don't know why the hell we're talking about running backs. Probably because I made a stupid joke about Kyron Williams. But no, you know what? I found this interesting because De'Aaron Fox, he got paid, right? He got a 4-year, $223 million extension that kicks in, I believe, in the 2026-27 season. And I've seen a lot of people just be like, well, it's a lot of money and maybe he's not worth it, but you have Victor Wembanyama and, you can trade that pick whenever you need to trade it, or you trade that, not that pick, trade that contract when you need to trade it. He'll exist as salary filler if they go after Giannis and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, look, maybe that's all true, but they're just not a particularly like, to me, it's like if the guy isn't worth the contract, I don't think there's a good logic for like to have it on your books. Like this is kind of where we got to with RJ Barrett, right? Where it was like, first of all, we signed him to an extension, which at the time I was like, that's a pretty good value, man. Like you got him well below his max number. You didn't go to 5 years, right? It was a 4-year extension. He's presumably going to get better, right? The idea was, okay, second season was good, third year not so good, but like he's trying to, add more layers to his game as far as shot creation goes, and you're projecting some improvement and whatever. And like as that goes on, then after like another year, we're like, fuck, this extension's about to start, and actually this contract might just fucking suck. At least in that case, you could be like, well, they projected that he would maybe take another step or two, and that didn't occur. With De'Aaron Fox, like this is what he is, man. Like this is it. This is a final product player, and what I mean by that is he is entering his age 28 season. This is his prime. This is what he is as a player. This is what he is. He is a middling efficiency scorer on high usage who is not a particularly good or threatening three-point shooter, who is often shaky at the line, not the greatest free throw shooter for a point guard. He's a good passer, not a great passer. He's a bad defensive player, although he has moments that are good. And like to me, it's just a weird thing where I've just seen a lot of conversation where it's like, well, when you trade for the guy, right? You trade 3 first-round picks for him. Obviously, you're going to give him the max extension. I'm like, okay, but nobody fucking forced you to trade for him. This was your choice as a franchise to trade for the player, and with the expectation, I guess, that he would get this max extension. To me, I just think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake for a few reasons, and like the main reason being that, like, Wembanyama is fucking awesome. Like, he is really fucking good, and you don't need to like leap at the first good player who becomes available and then have to pay them like a great one when they're not a great player. Like, to me, that's just it's a bad value. The entire value of getting Fox in a lot of ways would have come last year. He gets hurt, unfortunately. They only played, I think him and Victor played like 5 games together total. And then this year, when he's still on his like past contract, which is not that exorbitant, this is like the value zone right here. And after this season, he jumps up, right? He makes whatever that is. I think it's like about 57 million a year on average. Um, I don't know. I'm just not really that into it. I did not love the move when they made it. I think that you have to be at least willing to negotiate, which they did not seem willing to do. And what I would suggest is like, I don't know, like do you think that there was a team out there in free agency if they had let him play out the year that was going to jump at throwing him this type of money? Like I don't think that was out there for him. So I just think that you need to be more willing to negotiate unless you're getting a guy to come in at less than what his max would be. Like the Mikal Bridges one, yes, it's close to his max extension, but we all know that like if he hit free agency, not I mean, okay, I guess I'll rephrase this. I think most people would think 150 is right around what you could at least baseline project for him in free agency. And there might be a team that comes in and is like, you know what, we fucking love Mikal Bridges. We want to give him, and we need Mikal Bridges on this team. So we're going to go to 165 or something like that. And now you're in a bidding war. I just don't buy that there was a team out there that, yeah, maybe there's a team that's willing to go to like 180 or something on Fox. But when you're talking about giving the guy a 4-year, $223 million extension, I don't know. Like, this is not, to me, you give max extensions to guys that you're 100% certain are, especially this level of max, right? It's the 30% max or whatever. Like, you give that to guys that you're 100% certain are elite, like stars. Yes, elite stars and borderline superstar type, at least minimum type of players. And Fox, who I want to be clear is good, is just not that. He's a one-time All-Star. He's a one-time All-NBA guy, and he's entering his age 28 season. His best attribute, you would say, is what? Like the fact that he can hit, his speed combined with being a quality ball handler. But the speed is what really, really elevates him. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be fucking washed in a year or something, but that's a skill that naturally will be less impactful for him as he ages because that's how it works. So I don't know. I didn't have a problem with them trading for him. I have a problem, I guess, with not negotiating a bit harder and just the number itself, like what they ultimately gave him, which was his max extension, to me is just like a really ridiculous overpay, and it's not unsalvageable or anything like that in the sense of like they can probably move it productively even if they need to, but it will run you more assets to move on from him and upgrade on that salary slot than I think people are giving credence to.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things here, right? So you're really buying that 1 year that Fox had with Sabonis, where I think he was like 50% from floater, short mid range, or from that mid range area. So he showed that. I think his 3-point percentage was better. The playmaking was as good as it was, and he had that. So he's playing with a dynamic big for really the. Did he overlap with Cousins at all? He didn't, right?
No.
Yeah, so he's playing with a dynamic big, and you have some proof of concept, which is why maybe San Antonio went with him instead of holding out for Trae Young or even maybe I don't know what the hell's going on in Dallas, but maybe they could have gotten like a year or two of Kyrie. But I think they feel like with Wemby, there's that same thing, right? A big with gravity. Wemby, I think, is underrated a little bit as a passer. Maybe not quite Sabonis level yet, but he has good feel. He can handle the ball.
I mean, I think the best way to put it with Wembanyama is this is unlikely for anybody who ever plays basketball, at no matter how great they are. But like being viewed as the greatest player of all time is on the table for him. Like it is on the table as a potential outcome.
Which we can't say that since LeBron, right? That's the only other player you could say that about when he came in the league.
Maybe at a stretch you could say Luka, but I don't think Luka has that potential anyway.
Yeah, Luka or Zion or even AD. AD I thought was a generational prospect who was more like he could be top 10 for sure.
He could be like Duncan, KG, but like not.
But there's a ceiling there.
Yeah.
Whereas Wemby, there's nothing he can't really do on the basketball court, right? This is Wilt with a motor, maybe, and several inches more. and a 3-point shot. Right? So pretty insane to think about. But so I think they feel like there's that proof of concept. In terms of roster construction and overall strategy, though, I think they're kind of just looking to accumulate value and then see how it shakes out, which isn't too dissimilar from what the Knicks did. The Knicks were drafting all these combo guards. You already get Quickly, you get McBride, you get Rokas. Um, then you sign Kemba, then you sign Brunson, right? They were accumulating value and then see once everything shakes out.
So you're based what you basically said there is Kemba and Brunson are basically the same level signing for the Knicks.
No, but I'm obviously not. But they kept bringing in guards, right? They were very guard heavy early on, right?
Yeah.
And that's
I mean, even until last year, like until they traded for OG, they were a guard heavy team.
Yeah. And so what San Antonio is doing is, so they found value, right? Like the trade right now to Minnesota to get the future first looks really good because, Dillingham is not he's very skinny, right? And it doesn't look like that is going to be in the cards for a couple years for him to be a significant contributor. And they got extra value from it. So, they're making those moves, but they've also accumulated all of these non-shooters. Now you can say, well, you have a stretch 5 who has unlimited range, even if the percentages aren't great yet. He's still 20. Maybe that makes sense, but they just, they drafted Dylan Harper. Stephen Castle is another guy who you have maybe that upside of being a guy who's a paint pressure guy who can create. And then you have Fox. So you've accumulated a lot of the same guys. Their vision might be, well, Fox will look good. And, we can move him if we need to, or if he really blows up, maybe we can move Harper for a third guy, or Castle, right? I think Castle not being in a lot of these trade talks, could they have gotten a guy like Miles Turner? I think Miles Turner and Wembanyama is very interesting together, right? You tell Indy he's leaving anyway. We can make this work somehow. I don't know if the salaries would have worked or whatever. Maybe I think they could have just taken into space, right? But whatever it is, the roster construction just doesn't make as much sense. So I think they're trying to accumulate assets, and they view Fox as one. In terms of would the person have signed for more after this year? I think with both Bridges and Wembanyama, or Bridges and Fox, you would anticipate them having good years because of the context. I think we all anticipate that Bridges will probably have a much better year. It's a new coach, second year in the system, is familiar. He's playing on, as you said, one of the top 2 or 3 contenders. And then, I would expect Fox to be a lot better playing next to, again, a guy, there's no question about his talent in Wembanyama. So they might have been trying to get ahead of that. And it's like, if this guy averages 25 and 8, maybe that's inflated by Wembanyama, but we can't lose him for nothing. But the roster construction, it is tricky. You wonder if they could have just punted for a year or 2 more, even with Wemby, the way Oklahoma City did, right? Oklahoma City Shea was ready to go been ready to go for a while, right? And they were tanking seasons or, shutting him down and playing the long game. I wonder if San Antonio could have done that with Wemby, but he's already a top 10, maybe top 5 player at this point. So I get that. I do want to throw this part of it back to you, though, because it's one thing I've been thinking about over the last couple of days. Does this remind you at all of kind of Houston's misfires in building around Hakeem Olajuwon? I think you're more knowledgeable about that era than I am. But he only, I'm calling you old. He only, he only made the finals 3 times. But between that period, right? That wasn't because of MJ. That was the West wasn't that great, right? The Lakers were fading. You have Phoenix, Portland. Dream was the best player in the West all that time, and they didn't make it until Jordan retired. Do you see some of the misfires maybe, or do you see the way San Antonio is building around Wemby, almost with that luxury that this guy is so fucking good, like we just need to accumulate assets and we can play the long game. It's going to work out eventually. Do you see some parallels there?
Honestly, no, mostly because Houston just got unlucky in a lot of ways. Like, a couple guys on our team just got suspended from the league because of cocaine.
Samson, right? Samson was one,
No,
right?
well, so no, Samson didn't get suspended.
You're
Mitchell
saying.
Wiggins, yeah, Mitchell Wiggins. There's a couple guys, and then Samson fucked up his knee, and like he was never the same, and that was kind of just what happened there. Um, and I'm not. There's no reason to go into like extreme detail, but like when you lose a player of Samson's caliber, I mean, they were Twin Towers, that was the dream. Like they were a fucking problem. They went 6 games in the NBA Finals with the '86 Celtics, who are considered, if not the best, definitely one of the best teams in the history of basketball. Um, so like that just gives you an idea of like how good that team was, how talented they were. But when you lose one of your two like cornerstones, that's obviously going to set you back. And then on top of that, you lose a couple other guys. It just takes time. I would say if there's ever been a comparison to Olajuwon, it would probably be in terms of like I'm not saying they're equal players because as great as this guy is, he's not Hakeem to me. But in terms of like having a pretty awesome situation and then kind of shooting yourself in your own foot, but then eventually getting back to the top anyway, would be Dirk, right? Where it's like you had him with Nash, and then it's like, but Nash is 30, so we can't pay him now, and like then it's like, but yeah, what if I go to Phoenix and now I'm actually better than I ever was in Dallas,
And then
and
like the perfect offense, right? Yeah.
right, yeah. So like, but then obviously Dallas ends up winning, but it took time, and they really never replaced Nash, right? You're not going to replace that good of a player, but they just kind of figured out how to get enough pieces, and then you keep putting yourself in the mix, and eventually, you get lucky sometimes. And I mean, I'm not going to say their title was luck, but like they were not the favorite, and they definitely. If you simulate that season, I would guess they would not have won more than like what 7-8% of simulations or something like that. Um,
And on the flip side, I would say they had bad luck too, right? Where
right,
they lost as a 67 win team.
right,
I
and
still think the 2006 finals was bullshit. Wade
that,
got a whistle. Like I knew Prime MJ didn't even get that whistle. So
I don't think anybody. I don't even like. We obviously have talked about James Harden many times, but like I don't even think Harden ever gets that whistle, man. I've never seen anything like that. But yeah, it's like I mean the Wemby thing is just. I think that what I would say is I actually don't even think it's like again I don't think it's a problem that they got Fox. Like the trade itself, I've been lower on Fox than a lot of people for a while, but like I don't have a problem with them taking that chance because you know if you think as highly as I'm sure they do and most people do of Wembanyama, your thinking is probably like, hey, maybe Fox isn't like he's not really like a top 5, 6, 7 guy at his position, maybe, but with Wembanyama, he might be that good. I don't mind taking that chance. I just wonder if your plan should change a little bit once you get that number 2 pick and get Dylan Harper, who everybody seems to be really, really high on. Maybe they're doing the right thing. Maybe you kind of want to hedge your bets in different ways.
and
And
he's a very similar. I mean, he's not a similar player, but he's a downhill paint pressure guy, right? So that I don't want to say it's redundant with Fox. There's a lot of people who say as much paint pressure as possible is good, but yeah,
like
like they
Tom
both need the
Thibodeau,
ball in their hands. What?
like Tom Thibodeau,
Yeah, but they both need the ball in their hands, right? Like,
right?
so that's kind of the issue there.
Right. So that's why I mean, look, again, I want to be clear. Like, I don't think this is like some catastrophic decision, and even if it is, they do have the draft ammo to like move off of it when and if they need to. But I do think, I just think the actual value of Fox himself on this contract is not good. And if they wanted to just trade him to get assets, I don't think they would get good assets for him. And honestly, like I believe quite strongly that when he got traded at the deadline, people were like, "Oh my god, I can't believe the Kings didn't get more for him." Maybe they should have gotten more for him, but like I think this is why because teams knew like if we trade for this guy, we might have to give him this max contract, and he's not going to be worth that max contract, even though he's definitely worth the contract he's currently on.
And
Um,
and I would add, right? Like you can say San Antonio is a small market, whatever. I mean, I think that equation should have changed, right? Because you get to play with a guy again who is going to make you look good, right? He can play next to anybody. So that also to me, like San Antonio will be able, they got, I mean, when they were good, they got LaMarcus Aldridge to leave Portland. I'm sure he could have, if he wanted to, go to the Lakers or something, right? If he wanted to. So it's not like San Antonio, when they're good, hasn't been a free agent destination. And like, who would not want to play with Wemby, right? So.
Oh yeah, I mean, and the only time I think they lost a bidding war was when the Knicks came in and stole Marcus Morris from them. But yeah, look, they, as far as I'm concerned, they've had a long time here to build up their roster. They've had a lot of first round picks. I think their work, aside from getting lucky and landing Wembanyama, has been quite underwhelming in terms of their draft
There's
selection.
no shooters. There's no
Right.
shooters.
It's Vassell. It's just Vassell. But like their collection of talent, considering how much time they've had, considering the amount of draft capital they've kind of used, is pretty underwhelming. Aside from Wemby and I guess Dylan Harper, who I don't know anything about him, but he seems to be very, very highly regarded. I'm not as high on Stefan Castle as a lot of people. He's a flat out bad shooter. And again, like another guy where it's like, okay, how does this all work? I don't know. FanDuel has them. Their over-under is set at 43.5 wins. I feel like I don't know about making the playoffs, and I don't want to make any grand proclamations because the West is a bear. But like, I think it should be kind of like, hey, like it's time to like let's be. If you want to be competitive, which is obviously the point of trading for Fox and giving him all this fucking money. And like they have invested in the roster in a legitimate way this offseason, I think, in terms of I actually think getting Luke Cornett's like a pretty solid move for them. I like that move for them. So they're trying to win basketball games. I think like this is a team where if you don't hit that over, barring catastrophic injury issues, that should be a problem. And I'll even say this, like by a lot of metrics, they were basically the worst team in basketball the last 2 years whenever Wembanyama is not on the floor. That's not really acceptable to me for a team that's had as much time and again had as many bites at the draft as they have. Like just as an example, we hear all the time about teams that, oh man, this team really fucked up. They passed on this guy, they passed on that guy. In the 2022 draft, they took Jeremy Sohan 9. Who went 12th in that draft, Stacy?
Which draft? So can you say the year again?
2022.
12th. It was not Grimes. I paid less attention to that. Was that Jalen? Oh, Jalen Williams, right?
Jalen Williams. Like we hear about all these teams.
Even Duran would have probably been a better pick,
yeah.
Right?
So like, I mean, you can go down, but like you got Jalen Williams at 12, you have Duran at 13, you have Tari Eason at 17. Like these are three guys that are quality players. They also took Malachi Branham at 20. These are the picks after Malachi Branham. Christian Brown. Do you think he'd be pretty good on this team? I do. Walker Kessler. Like they actually had those are the immediate next two picks. Christian Brown and Walker Kessler. I don't like doing this in the sense of like, I think at that time Malachi Branham at 20 was viewed as like a pretty solid pick.
I liked him as a prospect, yeah.
Yeah, but like the point is more like you can do this with their drafts for a while. Like 2021, their draft is they take Josh Primo at 12.
That was its own thing, right? Like
it was, but even at that time, that was felt like a lot of people felt like that was a reach. Like, hey, why are you taking Primo at 12? These are the picks after Primo. You have Duarte, you have Moody, you have Kispert. Okay, whatever, not a big deal. Şengün is 16. Trey Murphy is 17. You have our great Quentin Grimes at 25.
Deuce McBride, baby.
Yeah, Deuce at 36. But like, and I don't want to kill them for
Bones Highland.
It's not about like, and it's not like about one draft, right? It's not like I hate when people do that where it's like, oh my god, I can't believe they fucked up this pick.
Even Vassell, you can also say, right? Vassell went over Maxey, Halliburton, quickly, Bane. Yeah. I mean, you could say maybe he's better than Quickly.
Jaden McDaniels. I don't think he's better than Quickly, but Jaden McDaniels is like a guy that I think flat out is better than him, right?
He's just a better version of that player.
Right. And so like I just think it's when you have, and I wouldn't even count Vassell as like a miss because he is like fine. He's a fine player. But like aside from Wembanyama, look at the talent on this roster and you're like, this is really what like you guys have cooked up over 4 fucking years of like the draft, 5 years or whatever. I think the pressure's on them. I think the pressures or should be on them anyway. And I'm not talking about winning a championship or advancing to the conference finals or anything like that. But I do think like, hey, we should be at minimum an above 500 team, and we should be in the play-in. Like that should be like an actual target, and that should be a standard they're held to. And if they're not held to that, maybe it'll be because Wembanyama's not as good as we think he is. I highly doubt that based on what I've seen of him so far in his career. But like, if not, I think like you should. I think they deserve a little bit more of a critical eye than they've gotten over. I mean, I get it. They have a lot of institutional kind of like built up equity, but at some point you got to start winning ball games again, and they just haven't done that in a long time. All right, let's move on to our fun segment. Last week, me and Drew Steele, we drafted the worst moves that were made by the Knicks between 2010 and the start of the Leon Rose era, which is the end of the 2019-20 season, effectively, which was ended by COVID. We are going to me and Stacy kind of talked, and we kind of set up a similar endeavor, perhaps definitely a more difficult endeavor. But we defined the parameters a little bit more. So we are going to draft the Knicks' best moves from 2010 to the leading up until the Leon Rose era, and we will be starting this draft as defined from the start of the 2010-11 season to the end of the 2019-20 season. So, without further ado, we're going to get started. And Stacy, you have the first pick.
Yeah, there's a bunch of ways to go here.
Are there a bunch of ways?
Yes, because when you're selecting from a beautiful buffet or you're selecting from the opposite, it's still a difficult choice when all the options are even.
Look, there's a place in the world for shitty Chinese buffet, right? There's always a place in the world for
that. I am going to go with a draft pick. There were 2 draft picks I considered. I'm going to go with
Hernan Gomez.
Yeah, Hernan Gomez, the guy who is going to be better than Jokic. I'm going to go with, even if the player is maybe not as good as the other one, the guy who is still with the team and is still having an impact and helped probably more than he's given credit for, shore up the culture. And, there's other ways you can go. There were signings that, I'm thinking more about. There are signings and moves made in that era that helped. There's other ways you can go, but I'm going to go with my pick, taking Mitchell Robinson, 34th pick in the draft.
So I thought you were going to go with Frank or Kevin Knox.
It's the same draft as Kevin Knox. Kevin Knox over Michael Porter Jr. and Shea.
Fucking Shea, dude. Don't even get me started.
I'm sure Kevin Knox was in that other draft. But I'm going to go with Mitch, yeah.
That's surprising. Not because I had that listed as one of my 10 best things they did. I am surprised though that you have that as the best move they made in this decade. Just because I think there's like a couple that definitely stand out, and I also think there's another move that's even more significant. But I mean, look, Mitch is awesome. He has, I agree. I think you're right. Like he probably doesn't get enough credit for, I wouldn't say that he was the catalyst for their turnaround. I give most of that credit to both Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau in a lot of ways. But like they don't.
It's Randall.
Right. I mean, they don't have the success they've had without Mitchell Robinson. Like, say whatever you want about the guy, and his durability is obviously a major question mark. He's missed a ton of games in his career. He's been instrumental in basically every single one of their series, like playoff series wins. He
was the biggest guy in Cleveland, right?
I mean, he bullied the shit out of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Like that was a thing that not just was it obvious watching it to us, but like you had Jared Allen and Evan Mobley talk about that after the series is over. You have like, and that clearly is that's like a thing that still gets kind of talked about, and that was a thing that again both of those guys have talked about as like yeah like that really was kind of like a oh shit we need to get in the fucking weight room type of wake up moment for them. Um, you don't beat. I don't know that you beat. I don't think you beat Philly without him because
Yeah,
Hartenstein was getting destroyed by Embiid. Mitch locked him up. I mean, when every time Mitch was on the floor, we went on a run and Embiid was in hell. And then this year, I mean, look, obviously the Piston series was. I don't even know how the fuck to describe the Piston series because it was insane. And the Celtics series was insane too, but like, I mean, they were terrified of him. Like, Joe Mazzulla was petrified of Mitchell Robinson to the point that he's intentionally fouling him up 20, just trying to get him off the floor because he's that worried about him. Like that, I don't know that there's. You
well,
can
even had
argue.
the 3 fouls in a row, right? In I think it was game 4, or it was game 2, yeah, and it backfired, right? But that's how scared they were of Mitch, right? So they put them in the penalty, and then that's a really bad idea against Brunson early in the 4th, but it was worth it in that calculus. So
Yeah. So look, I would not have gone with that selection, but I do think that's a pretty good pick. Uh, so I will be going next. I have the second pick here, and I was picking between three separate things, which was again not Mitchell Robinson, as the best moves that the Knicks made. So I will go with. I am going to go with the Porzingis trade. I think trading Porzingis was incredibly risky in a lot of ways, or at least it was perceived as being risky. I think it was risky in the sense of what you were trying to do with that trade. But I think it was a great trade. I said it in real time. I thought it was a good trade in real time. I think it's actually aged better than I even would have expected, making it a great trade. Um, but they were definitely putting their. I mean, you could argue that like not the obviously in the aftermath you don't get Kevin Durant, you don't get Kyrie Irving, and not landing one of those big fish superstars ultimately costs Steve Mills and Scott Perry their jobs. I mean, Scott Perry I guess stuck around, but you know what I mean. Like they were not calling the shots anymore, which maybe is a good thing. But like, not maybe it was a good thing. But like if you look at that trade and you just kind of go back and think about it in retrospect, at the time they got killed for it. They got killed for it by fans, by media, local and national alike.
Howard Beck.
Uh, yeah, Howard the Beck. Uh, but like they were, what up, Beck? They were killed for it, and like in a lot of ways you could understand why, right? Because the idea was yes, Porzingis was injured, but like we had seen the flashes of superstardom from him prior. He had made an All-Star game the year he got hurt, right? He won the skills challenge at that All-Star game, but he had made the All-Star game. He was seen as like a burgeoning, rising young talent who had a chance to be one of the elite big men in the NBA. And he was kind of like the one good thing that you could point to from the Phil Jackson era that was like, okay, like all of this other shit might be fucked, but like this guy is actually really, really good, and this was a hell of a pick. Selecting him fourth overall when there was no consensus fourth overall pick in that draft. So to see like, but to have the balls, to trade him in the midst of what is effectively a god awful loss season, and you trade him, you get off of all of your bad money, and I don't think people valued that appropriately at the time because it
But you
was
probably
like,
don't get Randall if you don't do that, right?
well, yeah, I mean that's which was one of the ones I was debating, but like, um, you know, I think at the time it was like, why are you trying to get off of this bad money? And it's like, and the other idea was like, well, if you don't get Kevin Durant, you don't get Kyrie Irving, then this is the fucking disaster. The cap space means nothing, and Porzingis is more valuable than you're risking losing Porzingis, and it's like, I mean, now you look back at that. I mean, think about the frenzy that trade created, and now look at it, and you're like obviously Porzingis has had a fine career. He's gone on to win a championship with Boston, although how how impactful and meaningful he was to that specific title run is very, very questionable. Um, but like he's I don't think he's made an All-Star game since. He's never made an All NBA team in his career. He's bounced around now. He's on his fourth roster post Knicks, right? He was in Dallas. They dumped him for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans to Washington. Washington moves into Boston. Boston has him for 2 years, and then they say, "Thanks, buddy. You're out of here." I mean, he basically gets that. Right? Yeah, this is 5th team overall. He basically gets salary dumped to Atlanta. They have him on his expiring $30 million contract. We'll see. I mean, I think for them, it obviously makes sense to just see how he performs, what he looks like this year. But like, I mean, to kind of weigh the way that trade was talked about at the time versus how his career has panned out, and the fact that it gave the Knicks the foundation of like what they have built this franchise from. And sure, granted, I don't think if Steve Mills and Scott Barry were still in charge, this team would be where it is now. But like they got the franchise, they gave this foundation, this kind of blank canvas in a lot of ways, with a lot of flexibility available in terms of the salary cap, with surplus picks that were the result of the Porzingis trade, and gave it to somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing in terms of Leon Rose. And look at where this team is now. And that does not happen. I truly believe none of this happens if they did what was the easy thing. What is the easy thing for the Knicks to do in that situation, right? It's keep Kristaps Porzingis, max him. Everybody shakes your hand and says, "Good job, you finally re-signed a first-round draft pick, and now you're building around him," and blah blah blah. But like they did the hard thing. They did the hard thing, which was looking at this player who was certainly very talented, but had injury issues, had attitude issues, which he himself has admitted now. He had a case which I don't even know what the hell happened with that.
So I think a lot of it was his brother.
Yeah, he had his brothers, whatever.
He's changed, obviously. I think I don't of all the criticisms you might have of Porzingis, I don't think that's one anymore, right?
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't hear about his fucking brothers, which is probably good for him.
I mean, he's also been contrite and when talking about the Knicks and all that, right?
So like, but like to kind of have the clear-headedness to look at that situation and be like, and look, maybe they did it for the wrong reasons. Maybe they did it because they were like, we're getting KD and Kyrie. This is happening.
And Zion, right?
Yeah, and maybe they did it for the wrong reasons. But like to me, the logic in real time was very, very good and smart. I was like, because I guess the way I always felt about it was the only downside for the Knicks, if they didn't blow their cap space and sink it into long-term deals for, over like bad contracts and long-term contracts, if they missed out on Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, the only actual risk to me for the Knicks was Kristaps, he balls out and becomes a superstar. I didn't think there was a really good chance of that even at that time. Like, was it in the world of, was it a possibility? Sure. But like I wrote about it. Like me and Drew actually did like we did like a back and forth article about it where we kind of hashed it out right after the trade. But like I didn't think there was a good chance of it, but that was not the consensus. And again, it was a real risk. But so to have the kind of the balls to just be like, you know what, he's not worth his contract, and that's the contract he wants, and he's going to be a fucking diva if he doesn't get it. So we're going to trade this guy. And they had the foresight to do it. And I think there's, whatever anybody says, maybe they didn't get enough value, which I think is horseshit when you look at the fact that they were able to dump Tim Hardaway Jr. contract and the.
I think the argument is if you didn't try to dump money, you could have gotten more picks, right? Because dumping money was to get KD and Kyrie,
right.
So the picks would have been more valuable if you're not
right. Well, I have a feeling that one of the results of that cap space will be one of our next selections very soon. But
Bobby Portis?
Yeah, right. No. Wayne Ellington. But like I don't, looking back at it now, like I just don't think that you can really make the argument that they didn't trade him at the right time and that they didn't get great value for him in return.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like he felt like Porzingis Porzingis himself, which I do think should. I'm curious if that pick itself will be on our draft. But if you remember, the Knicks were booed, right? Stephen A. was literally quoting Denzel and Malcolm X to talk about the Porzingis pick, and then he kind of proved them all wrong from day one.
Led
Right?
astray, run amok.
Muck, bamboozled. And so I mean, that was the first guy. I think for a lot of Knicks fans, there is an emotional thing, right? But we've talked about this quickly. With Porzingis, I would say even more, right? Because they were really at their low point, and they were mocked for that pick by everyone. And he played hard. He played. I think at the time, a lot of the reason it was mocked was this. We can deny it or if it exists, but it definitely was a thing there where people were flat out saying there's never been European All Stars or whatever who's been picked since Gasol and Dirk. And it wasn't just that he was impactful, but the way he played, right? He was throwing down putback dunks over Kevin Love and the Marcus Aldridge. Like he played with an edge. He was very fiery and obviously very talented. So I think that was a big part of why people felt like, he gave us some hope. But it's a 7th. I mean, it's come to fruition. Why do you not pay him that? It had nothing to do with his talent. To the extent that, his efficient, he had that one huge stretch to begin, what was it, 2018? He had that blow up year, and then his efficiency tanked because teams keyed in on him and they had no point guard, right? They had Jared Jank and Frank. And they wouldn't play Frank. We'll always have that. We'll always have the Indiana game, right? But so you're thinking about paying this guy, and let's bring it to perspective for the Knicks right now, right? Part of the reason you pay Mikal Bridges is you said it, right? You have the 3rd best odds. This is not the time where you say, well, you try to find the best value for every contract. You don't get worse. That's where it is. The Knicks were in the opposite of that situation. You sign him, even if he stays healthy, you have these bloated contracts. You don't have anyone that can create for him. And what I was convinced of at that time is this guy's never going to be a hub. He wasn't Wemby, right? He had, we would see like, oh my God, this guy is a crossover at 7'3". It was a glacial pace, right? That's not the knock on him, right? He's 7'3". It's fine. He doesn't need that. But he was very much a play finisher, not a creator. So you're paying him that. You have the injury risk. In retrospect, it was a massive risk. And it's something they probably would have gotten plowed for, by the way. If they extend him, they don't get a point guard. They take RJ 3rd, right? Maybe that's what happens. I don't think that was going anywhere. It is funny because I think that year we were like, if we can get off, Randall is a good guy to pair with him. But it turned out well. Even if you look at what was the actual value, in terms of what they could have done with free agency and how much he was needed, people will debate that, right? Did you need to get rid of him to get Randall? I know, like a lot of us at Posting and Toasting were like, if you don't get Kyrie, Randall would be the perfect guy to play next to KP, right? So maybe it could have happened without that. But the picks, the first one was in that 2020 draft where is that the 2020 draft or was it 20? It was 2021, right? So they used it for Grimes, I believe, was the Dallas pick. The second one turned into Dadier, right? Who's looking like a decent prospect. We'll see what happens. And you get the cap space, and it was a reset, right? And so overall, I also think, like organizationally, it gives you it created a bit of a blank slate for Leon, right? Imagine if Leon came in anyway, and he's, he still has Porzingis on the roster now, an injury-prone big, a tough contract to move. He's beholden, right? Leon kind of got a clean break, and part of it, I would argue, to your point, is that trade. And so it's not just about the literal physical mechanics of the cap sheet. It is also like your canvas is just open. You can look at any different possibility. So yeah, I think that's a pretty solid pick.
Yep.
And then with the 3rd pick, or are we doing Snake or are we doing?
Yeah, it's you.
With 3rd pick, I will go with the one we've alluded to, signing Julius Randle. You could definitely argue it for number 1. It was he was the consolation prize, right? In a summer where they didn't get Durant or Kyrie Irving, but he's arguably contributed more than either of those guys did to Brooklyn. I'm not saying he's as good as either of them, but he contributed more than Knicks. He struggled his first season, but the vision. I think the vision that they had was this idea that like he's a role man, but he has the skills to be a creator, and it didn't come to fruition under Fizdale. But I do give them credit because I imagine even if they didn't envision him shooting 40% from three in COVID or becoming this not point forward exactly, but like this hyper high gravity distributor, right? For we complain about his processing and all of that. The guy's still putting up 6 assists a game to 3 turnovers, right? And that's supercharged. There's no way around that, right? You can say without Rose, without Thibodeau, this guy has to get credit for that. Because that 2020 season is what brought them back to respectability. Without Randall, maybe Brunson isn't looking at this team, right? He said, yeah, Leon's my godfather, but they haven't done shit.
Yeah.
Randall made them respectable. Even the season after, which was a bit of a lost season, they won 37 games, and everyone knew across the league, like, this is not a team to be messed with. And it's tough to argue that Randall was not as central to that as anyone. And look, people can debate about the value of Karl-Anthony Towns. He helped us get a superstar. He helped us get Karl-Anthony Towns, a better player, the kind of player who was not looking at the Knicks before, or the Knicks couldn't have gotten or been in a position to get him. So I think Randall, that pick, that signing has an argument for number one. It also was a very good value signing. I'm not going to talk about the extension because that has its own thing. But it ended up being one of the best contracts in the league when he signed it. During that.
I mean, he was basically on a value contract the entire time he was in New York. If you think about it.
Yeah. Multiple All-Star, which is not a common thing in New York. And yeah, I mean, I'll change their trajectory. There might not be Jalen Brunson in a Knicks uniform without Randall. There probably wouldn't be Cat in a Knicks uniform without Randall. So.
I mean, very simply put, 3 All-Stars, 2 All-NBA appearances. You can pretty much argue, not even like at a stretch and not facetiously, he was the best free agent signing of that summer. That summer that was like, oh my God, it was being compared to like the 2010 LeBron summer, right? Like, oh my God, you had KD, you got Kyrie, you have Jimmy Butler as a free agent. You have, you had Kemba Walker, who is still seen as an all-star kind of. I mean, he made an all-star team the year after as well. You had Kemba Walker. You had like all these bigger name guys. Like Kawhi was a free agent, right? He goes to the Clippers. Paul George gets traded. Whatever. All these, you had so many big names available in free agency that moved around, and the guy who arguably provided the team that acquired him, arguably the most. I mean, it's probably Jimmy Butler and then Randall. Like,
you make a case for Kawhi. I would make a case for Kawhi, but
I can't make a case for Kawhi because he just doesn't play basketball games. He just doesn't play. Like, he just doesn't play games. It's to me, it's like definitely Butler is the top guy, right? They went to 2 finals. He won, obviously they won 2 conference championships. Like, you got to give it to him. After that, though, like, Randall played a shit ton of games. He was way better than anybody thought. He made less money. Like, he clearly outperformed his contract in New York, both of them, right? The initial contract and then the extension that the Knicks ultimately used to get Cat. So he gave you value as a signing. He helped you build up your franchise in terms of like how it's perceived, your ability to acquire talent, to attract talent, right? It's like, hey, the Knicks are actually good. Like, this is a good team. He was vital to that. You can make an argument as far as a player is concerned. He was maybe the most vital, right? Because he was the first guy kind of in the door in that sense. And like you said, does Brunson actually come here if there's not some belief of like, okay, like, I get that he had a down season, but Randall's talented and I saw what he did last year. And if I go there, me and him together, we could be really good. Like, who knows? I don't know. But, maybe he doesn't come here, right? If Randall's not here. So to me, it's like, I just think that he was so good and so unexpectedly good, right? Like, just better than anybody could have anticipated. I think even people that liked Julius Randle, and there were a lot of people that liked him as a signing for the Knicks when the Knicks did sign him initially. If I told you that over the next 5 years, Randall's going to make 3 All-Stars and 2 All-NBAs and probably would have made a third All-NBA team if he didn't get hurt, like, you would have been like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, no shot. That's never happening. And for him to do it says volumes. And again, so they get value for him, as far as, what the contracts he was on, the production he gave you on the floor when he was available. And then you get value for him on the way out. Right, he is part of the package that gets you Karl-Anthony Towns. So I think he was probably the least important piece of that for Minnesota, but he clearly was part. I mean, he was part of the package. And
he ended up being the most valuable part of it, right? Because Dante had a shitty season. Like, Randall was pretty good for them.
Yeah, and we'll see what the hell this pick they used, whatever that becomes. But he was part of the package that landed you Karl-Anthony Towns, who I think
I wouldn't say it's like RJ, right, where that was straight salary, right? There's value for Randall.
And it was just, it doesn't even matter. Even if he was viewed the same way, he's clearly just a fucking better player than RJ Barrett. So, who cares? But you got Karl-Anthony Towns, who I think the Knicks really like, and I would say most fans really like him, even if we can debate how good is he, what are his flaws, blah blah blah. But the fact is, you got an all-star, you got an all-star, all-NBA center, and part of the package was Julius Randle, who himself was an all-star, all-NBA player. So, I just think this is the one I was debating the most. But yeah, this is probably would have been my.
Got to fight the inner Randle hater.
Yeah. Hey, I always say it. Second best Knick after Patrick Ewing. Since Patrick
Brunson?
Ewing. Yeah, Brunson's number 1.
Oh, okay. So third. Okay, you're not counting Patrick Ewing.
Yes, correct. I'm not counting Patrick Ewing. Okay. My next pick is drafting Kristaps Porzingis, number 3. Or so this would have been my 3rd overall, but this ends up coming in at number 4 here.
Like Porzingis.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say. He was not a consensus. There was no consensus at that 4th overall pick. He was seen as a disappointing consolation prize. As you mentioned, the Knicks got killed for drafting him because he was a project, and I'll still never understand what any of that means. Almost any player you get in any draft slot, really, but especially with if you're not the number 1 pick, most players don't come in and dominate. They're going to take time. Kristaps actually came in and was good. He was a good NBA player right from the start. He was a good 2-way player right from the start. He was a really tantalizing skill set. And, I think if you ever go back and watch the highlights of him when he was young, I think we kind of can forget how exciting watching him was. He was a very thrilling talent. And you
can see it now, right? Now he doesn't have the same athleticism, but he was legitimately very athletic.
Right. And I think you got to think about everything with the franchise, right? It kind of they'd come off their worst record ever, 17-65. It was a miserable season. Phil Jackson and Carmelo Anthony are in the beginning stages of constantly shitting on each other. There was really no
season 4 Carmelo and Tony.
They didn't have their pick in 2016. They didn't have a first round pick in 2016, and it just felt and they had they were tied right with the best odds that year. I think with Minnesota or whoever it was. They ended up falling to 4. Right. And this is under the old draft odds. So the Knicks got super fucked. And it just felt there was a consensus top 3. It was Cat, it was Jahlil Okafor, and it was D'Angelo Russell. And the Knicks missed out on all 3. It was seen as a horrible outcome for them. Can argue it ended up being the best fucking thing. Because is arguably the best player in that draft. I don't think he is. I think it's Towns or Booker, but he is like he obviously was. He was probably
I don't think Booker was that draft. Booker was
yeah,
the
he
year
was.
after, but we could have traded Porzingis for.
No. Booker's the same year. Booker's 100% the same year. He was the 12th pick, I think. And Turner was in that draft too. But like within the first month of like watching him play, it was very obvious the Knicks had hit on that pick, and we needed that. Fans really, really needed that at that time. We needed something to be hopeful for. We needed something to be optimistic about, and Kristaps gave us that. And then obviously, look, we didn't end the way you kind of hoped it would. Him and Phil Jackson have a very public falling out by the end of his second year in the league. But as I talked about extensively earlier, the Knicks also got value out of him on the way out. So, he helped give the Knicks fans hope when he was picked, and then he helped provide the kind of blueprint or the foundations of what ultimately turned into the best Knicks run since the 90s with the team that we have now. So, yeah, Kristaps Porzingis, drafting him, that's my fourth selection, just like he was the fourth selection.
Yeah, that's wild. I forgot Booker and Cat played together.
Yeah.
Why not win the championship? Calipari, man. You fucking
They
lost
lost.
to Wall
They
and
lost.
Cousins.
They lost. They lost. They lost to
Kaminsky, that boy
Wisconsin. Yeah.
Kaminsky.
Yeah, they lost to Wisconsin, right?
Yeah. Who was
Was
that
any,
poster? Yeah, it was Kaminsky. It was a really good Wisconsin team.
who the fuck was on that team other than Kaminsky?
They had Nigel Hayes, a freshman.
Oh yeah.
They had all those Wisconsin-esque white guys who can shoot, do all this shit.
They all have this. They all have the Full Metal Jacket haircut.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it energized the franchise, not in the same way, obviously, that Randall or actually winning did. But yeah, I mean that those first 20 games, right? You had to watch Stephen A. sit and eat crow. He proved a lot of people wrong. He brought an edge to the fan base that gave some pride, right? And he could flat out play. And I think it really mattered that he had a kind of toughness, like he would mix it up even when he was skinny, right? I forget the Marquise Chris, right? There's that famous play where but I remember this play where Marquise Chris threw him down and KP went right at him, right? He's going after I forget that antagonist on the Atlanta Hawks. He's like a defensive who's the 6'5", 6'6". That's like
I don't remember, but
he was that kind of a goon, right? And going at KP. And yeah, it helped. And it gave the Knicks fans some hope. It ended up, as you said, and I do have a bit of a follow up, which I'll ask after this. The cascade at least that trade, right? If you pick a guy like Hezonja, then you can't even make that trade. But by the way, I'll fully admit Hezonja was who I wanted. I didn't react as badly to the trade as a lot of to the pick as a lot of Knicks fans did. But I wanted Hezonja. That was my guy at 4.
I think I wanted. I think I was. Yeah, I wanted Hezonja too. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you can argue some of the seeds were planted. That was that wasn't the turnaround, right? But it may have been the stop of like just progressing to the abyss, right? KP put a break on that. They still had another bad season where they tanked. But yeah, one of the more exciting players you get to watch, and it was also a team that just frankly hadn't hit on many draft picks, right? I mean, who are between Ewing and KP, Strickland, even in the 90s, you had all of these misses, right? The other picks you can compare are Strickland, maybe Wilson Chandler, Gallinari, but Porzingis was probably the best draft pick since Ewing they had, which was important for changing the narrative for a franchise that was viewed as you either trade away your picks or you take Jordan Hill, right? You take, they ended up taking Knox afterwards, so it didn't completely fix the narrative. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to disagree with that pick. So
yeah, I mean, it was a great pick. Actually, the funny thing about that draft too is they, whatever, we'll maybe get to that later. But it was, yeah, look, it was, and again, like I said earlier, like I think just the perception, right, of big European, big man from Europe, kind of the stereotypes that get associated with that. And then you also have like kind of the specter of Frederick Weiss, that pick that the Knicks made back in '98, looming over the franchise. Like it was a risky pick from a perception standpoint. And look, say whatever you want about Phil, but that pick really, really helped the Knicks out in a lot of ways. And you know what? It even kind of helped the Knicks get out of a rut that he helped kind of put them in. So yeah, great pick.
And also gave us the toe give. So
yes. Thank you to James for that also.
So with the fifth pick, this is what I want to ask, right? I think you're probably going to figure out what I'm thinking of here. How do we think about cascades, right? Like you sign a player, and then part of the impact of that signing is what they were traded for. Can you lump them together? Are they two separate moves?
Sorry, say it again. What was the question? That's my fault.
Hypothetically, right? If the Knicks were to sign a player on a good value deal and then trade him for value, right? This is completely hypothetical. Do you bundle them together as one move? Do you count the cascade as part of the free agent signing? This informs.
Yeah, I think it's separate moves, right?
Okay, then out of the two moves, I will go with.
Actually, no. I think no. I know where you're going with this. I think that counts as one move. I think that counts as one move because I think I'll explain it when you make the picks. But either way, make your pick here.
My pick is a twin. I assume that's not surprising.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with basically, as Shwin clarified, Marcus Morris, both signing him for a good value deal, which he performed like a borderline all-star.
Shot fucking like 45% from three.
Just putting up Steph numbers. And like I think he just has like 0.5 assists or something. Gave one of the most memorable gifts ever with bouncing the ball off of Justin Anderson's head. And then led to a trade that led to Quickly, which, I mean, Quickly was the main reason we were able to get OG.
Yeah, shot 44% from three on 6.1 3-point attempts per game. I just want to get the 100 per 100 possession numbers because I always like looking at that. He shot 9.3. He shot a career high in terms of attempt rate from three that year. So that's funny. We're with the Knicks anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, and you could make an argument for that as number one because, again, on the one hand, I will say Mitch, I think part of it was just how it's 34th pick. You don't hit on that normally. What up to Anthony Early? And, how he's been basically on a great contract for his whole time in New York, has contributed to multiple series wins. But right now, OG is the better player, right? I think you would disagree with that. OG is more valuable to the Knicks than Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah. I mean, even if you just want to go, which is kind of crazy to say about OG, but like just from a durability standpoint, I mean, you have to give it to OG.
Well, knock on wood, it was actually pretty good last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can draw a direct line to OG Anunoby to Marcus Morris. In addition to giving the Knicks some level of confidence during that year. And then even, I mean, that's not to discount what Quickly did bring to the Knicks, right? Quickly, during that 2020 year, I don't think it's a stretch to say he was maybe their second most important player. Mitch got hurt, right? Mitch was having his big blow up that year, but he got hurt after 30 games. You can argue Derrick Rose. Most people would say Derrick Rose is more important, but the on-offs don't lie with Quickly. He was very valuable. Maybe they don't make the playoffs that quickly. I don't think that's an extreme thing to say. And he did whatever was asked for him. I think he helped build that culture. And then he got you OG, and that's all because of Marcus Morris. And even on that season, it wasn't like Eddie Curry being used to get Melo. He was a very good player for the Knicks. So, yeah, that's my pick.
Yeah, Morris was really good. I think what's also probably needs to be said is he was with the team for the perfect amount of time where it was like we could appreciate him for what he did. He played well enough, and then we got a good value for him in trade. So we did not ever have to worry. Like, we never got too familiar with some of his more unsavory characteristics, let's put it. He did have a weird comment in his time here about What
He
did he
didn't
say?
bounce any checks, right? So
Not while with the Knicks anyway. He said something about, didn't he say something about like feminine tendencies or something? That was not a great quote. But
there was also a quote which I think they said, I think they might have switched, but he was on a pod with Markeith and someone asked him like,
oh
if you
yeah,
guys
yeah,
ever
yeah,
switch places, we can't talk about that. Which
yeah.
I think
Nah,
it
yeah,
probably was just one of them substituting for each other at a game in like high school, but obviously there's darker connotations.
right.
Darker
And yeah, and again, we did not have to deal with too much of that because he was in the door and out the door within what, like 6 months. And the trade was great. Like, if they clearly signed him, I don't know what the hell. I think Steve Mills like fell in love with the fact that he was like actually really good and wanted to keep him and sign him to more money. But I think the original plan was clearly like, sign this guy. If he's really good, we could probably flip him for value. If he's not, it's a 1-year deal. Who gives a shit? He was really fucking good for the Knicks. They got a first round pick, and I mean the thing is, they got the first round pick, obviously, which we know, through trade eventually becomes Emmanuel Quickly. What people forget, though, is the second round pick they got in that, which was a Detroit second rounder. They end up trading that. That ends up being the 32nd pick in the 2022 draft. Sorry, the 2021 draft. And the Knicks traded that pick for 34 and 36 and got Deuce McBride with one of those selections. So they really cashed in hard.
It wasn't the Derrick Rose pick or the pick they used to get Rose?
No.
Either way, I think that's a lot of value. But yeah,
I think they got 2 seconds actually in that trade. So whatever, it doesn't really matter. Either, yeah, to the point you're making, they cashed in hard on that trade. So, look, man, that was like the perfect rental signing ever, and because the Knicks didn't do shit like that, and probably wouldn't have done shit like that if Steve Mills had stayed in charge, it was very, very nice departure from what had been usual course of business for the Knicks. All right, I have the next pick, and I am picking. All right. I'm going to go with the Melo trade, but not the Melo trade you'd think. Trading Melo, getting rid of him. Great trade.
Which ties to the number 1 pick, by the way.
Yes, great trade by the Knicks. It was done. It was over. Even though Phil Jackson was gone, the relationship between Melo, I think the fans in a lot of ways, but the franchise
and the timeline, right? They weren't competing for the next couple of years. And
it didn't make any sense for him. But it was not an easy negotiation. This is what people need to like remember is like Scott Perry actually deserves a lot of credit for this because Carmelo Anthony, like basically his relationship with the organization was broken at that point in time. He had a no trade clause. He didn't want to go to Oklahoma City, which is where he gets traded. He wanted to go to Houston. And the Knicks had, famously, if you remember, Frank Isola tweeted that the deal was at the, what was he called it, like at the goal line or at the 1 yard line or some 2 yard line, whatever the fuck he said. And there was just like, it was like.
They didn't have Jalen Hurts. That was the problem.
Right. That was, or Josh Allen. But they that just lingered the entire summer. It was not resolved over the course of the summer. But like the Knicks, they had a stare down with him, right? It was like, look, you might want to go to Houston. There is no deal there that makes any sense for us. So we will see what other teams are interested in you, and we'll, you're gonna have to take one of these other fucking deals because otherwise you're gonna be stuck here, and we know you don't want to be here. And they were able to get. Look, did they have to eat the fucking bullshit Enes Kanter contract? Yes, that sucked. But they did get Doug McDermott out of it, which he was fine for the time he was here in New York. But more importantly, they got
Moutier. We got Moutier right from Doug McDermott.
Yeah. Well, that was what a fucking great move.
It led to that one game against the Lakers, right? Where Moutier, but he had like 27 that game, but it was Hezonia's block anyway.
But like they get a second round pick, which was actually the Bulls' second round pick, which makes this a little bit sweeter. They get this pick and they draft Mitchell Robinson with it. And as we discussed, he's been a great, fantastic Knick. But yeah, I mean, I just think that trade was like it just needed to happen, and it was a good trade because they needed to put the fucking team on KP's shoulders and see what it was. And obviously we already talked about how that all played out, but it was the right trade at the right time. It was the best they could do as far as I'm concerned, considering Melo had a couple of down years, and as we know, he kind of like never bounces back at the level that anybody thought he might. Um, he has a couple down years. He had a no trade clause. They get a decent deal. Cantor, unfortunately, they couldn't flip for anything, but to get a second round pick,
You didn't have to get off Cantor with like picks though, right? He just left, right?
we waived him at the deadline.
Yeah,
After the
that's
trade deadline. Yeah,
it
yeah,
was when he was expiring. It wasn't like stretched or anything.
right. So, yeah, just a really solid move and one that was like necessary at the time. And honestly, like you mentioned, the thing with Melo was just over. It was over. There was that team was never going anywhere. As it was constructed, and they needed to move on, and they turned the page, and all roads ultimately led to Leon Rose. So we're happy campers here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll even not push back, but the artist formerly known as Enos Cantor,
Penis cancer.
who's now, well, we don't need to talk about that at this point. Actually, I haven't even heard him talk during the new Trump era. The guy maybe is focused on other endeavors. But I'll even say this: he gave you 14 and 11. Yeah, his defense was dog shit, but he wasn't. He didn't end up blocking anyone. Right. The worst thing you can say is that him and I have never had anything against Steve Popper, except do you remember Steve Popper got in this weird thing with Cantor about why are they benching him for Mitchell Robinson? He's a double, and the fans were chanting for Cantor. That was stupid. And I had been screaming that play the fucking alien who is 7'1" and moves like he's prime Gary Payton at the time. I don't think that was a crazy thing to say. Play him ahead of Cantor, but they did that. And for what it's worth, I think Cantor was even a decent locker room guy. So I don't even think that was a bad value, really. And they got the pick that got them Mitchell Robinson. They didn't let themselves get strong armed by Melo to just take dog shit from Houston or some other team. And it looked better because what did Melo do as soon as he got to Oklahoma City? I feel I'm not a Melo hater. I actually like Carmelo Anthony. I grew up a Syracuse fan. So we're kind of different on that. It's why I would think harder about. I probably would agree with you on Randall being a better Knick than Melo, but it's not nearly as cut and dry for me as it was for you. But he goes to Oklahoma City, he gets himself waived, goes to Houston. Or did he play for a year with? He played for a year with Oklahoma City, right? Next to
yeah. He played there for a year, then he gets bought out, I don't think, and then he goes to Houston for 15 games. Then he's out of the league for a year and a half.
Which, by the way, Houston, we already saw what happened with D'Antoni and Melo. I mean, you can argue maybe it would have been a Tibbs versus Cat situation, but Melo was he was a veteran already. Him and D'Antoni were oil and water. That just wasn't going to work. And then he leaves there, and then now everyone's like, oh, he's blackballed, right? I think he went to Atlanta for a bit after that.
He went to gets traded to Atlanta, but they dump him basically, and then he's out of the league for a while. But then he comes back with Portland. Then he spends a year with the Lakers, and then I think he was done.
Yeah, I mean, so there wasn't much basketball left, and you mentioned that. Oh, it wasn't even to me about the player. Because he played well in Oklahoma City. Now that I think about it, he did have a good season next to George and Westbrook, and he embraced kind of that off-ball third option shooter role. And I think Melo's got an unfair rap for a lot of things. A lot of it was that post Iverson kind of backlash against people of a certain demographic that doesn't exist as much today. But I think Melo was a victim of that, so I do have sympathy for him. But he didn't. But he was also just struggled to stay healthy. I do think Melo is a player where I do think he became a much more mature player. I think you listen on pods I think is he on NBA and NBC now? They're using him, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think he knows the game well. I think he did evolve as a player, but it came a little bit too late, right? Early in his career, he was kind of this athletic monster, but he was inefficient from 3-point range. Took a lot of middies. as he became more 3-point oriented, the athleticism went. That Roy Hibbert block maybe is the epitome of that. Not, I mean, he's still able to finish, but wasn't the guy who was dunking on Paul Millsap, right? And so to me, I always wonder, like, if you had that late career shooting with Melo's prime athleticism, and then some of the self-awareness that he developed later, I do think that could have been a great player. And as much as I think you blame and we fairly blame the Melo for, because of how much they had to give up for him, because he was unwilling to sign just as a free agent, he wanted the extension, that kind of forced their hand. But there were moves that they made that were not his fault, right? They stretched Chauncey Billups. They made moves. They did the Bargnani trade. They made moves that were, frankly, I don't think the Derrick Rose trade was good. They made moves that, frankly, were not good, that weren't his fault. But all of that said, recognizing that it's not going to happen, you can't just keep this player around for sentimental value, and getting the right value. Now, maybe you can say that second round pick becoming a future. Is it fair to call Mitch a top 10 center?
Yeah, future Hall of Famer.
We don't know about Hall of Famer, but Nick, you said he's won multiple. He has been arguably the.
He's won more fucking playoff series for us than Melo. That's a fact. But that's not the point right now. Not the point right now. The point is, he literally was more decisive in winning playoff series than Carmelo Anthony. Like, you won that trade by a mile when that happens. Like, that's just, you win it. I'm sorry. There's no other way.
At the time, you can't say, the 34th pick could have ended up being Anthony earlier, right? So, but all in all, yeah, it's tough. I mean, that was the right move. It was, again, after some bad moves, a sign of competence, which I think does give you some credibility around the league. I mean, we talk about kind of Rose and Thibodeau being that catalyst for free agents looking at the Knicks like, they're not a joke. But I think, moves like picking Porzingis, moves like and developing Porzingis, moves like trading Melo also planted those seeds. And maybe that's part of Dolan's evolution, right? Where instead of interfering, he's looking or trying to win now, he's looking at the long term. We know Dolan and Melo had a very close relationship, right? So I know Dolan is very polarizing, but it started to show that evolution of the franchise, or at least the first initial steps, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So I think this is my fourth pick. I am going to go. I really liked the signing at the time, and they went backwards, which I obviously didn't like. But I actually really liked the Robin Lopez signing.
I had that.
Look, I was a full Phil Jackson believer. I will say that.
So was I. Any good Knicks fans should have been, because we should have been. We're always the whole point of fandom is to constantly talk yourself into why your team is good and everything else. Anybody that criticizes them is wrong.
But I mean, I think in terms of team building and all of that, I think I will say, not to pick on Melo again, but I think that Melo extension really hamstrung a lot of what they did. But his vision for he knows ball, to put it like Porzingis was a pick he made because he knows ball. He knows that, if a guy's 7'2" and they're 7'3", whatever, and can shoot like that and can jump like that and has good instincts, that's a no-brainer, right? I think a big part of it, one was the Melo, all the stuff with Melo, and two, just his own, just being a weird older curmudgeon. Which is ironic because if you listen to this philosophy from like any Bulls documentary, it's the exact opposite, right? But he leaned into this weird motivational stuff. We don't have to get into all that. But Robin Lopez was a great value signing, especially when you look at the next year, where it was the next year, right? Where Mozgov gets the $65 million contract. Bismack Biyombo, like bigs were just getting tons of fucking money, and we already had Lopez. Of course, he did that with a move that I assume was on the other draft podcast you did with Doug, by inexplicably making the Rose trade and then getting Noah. But Robin Lopez was like, Phil developed him, right? He started using Robin Lopez, developed a little hook shot game, was used in the post as a passer. I think Robin Lopez was a good fit for what Phil wanted to do on offense. And it gave them some stability. It gave them a hub where they didn't really have creators. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say in some ways Robin Lopez functioned a little bit as a hub, as a guy like, Melo's your scorer, but, in that he's not like Hartenstein, but a guy you can feed the ball down to. He can take a couple dribbles. He can look at the defense, read where the help is coming from, and guys can play off him. It gave some stability, and I think I don't think they should have traded Lopez. I think they should have stuck with him. And obviously hindsight is 2020, but that was when they did the Rose trade. More than just any skepticism of Derrick Rose, I was like, we don't need, like, Lopez is a good player on a good value contract.
I believe when he signed, he was like 4 years, $52 million. If I remember correctly, the math, he was something like it's like 15% of the cap or something like that. I thought it was a great deal at the time. I thought it was a solid contract. It was a contract where you knew those big cap jumps were coming. That was the other part of it, is you got him at this number, and that number was only going to drastically decrease as the cap spiked in a big way. So it was good player. I did not feel that Kristaps was ready to be a full-time center at that point in time. So I know that was a big point of contention at the time, where it was like, why are we signing this guy? Kristaps could play center. And I was like, I don't think he's ready. Lopez was he was just a good fucking player, man. He was like a really good screen setter. He was a solid defensive player at that time. Not spectacular, solid. He had a little like hook game going. He had this little hook game. He was an efficient player, not a super, not great.
But he showed more on offense, I think, under the Knicks than he did the rest of his career. He was pretty efficient.
Yeah, he was good. He was a good player. I enjoyed rooting for Robin Lopez. He was a good Knick for a year. I actually did not mind the Derrick Rose trade because I thought it was a good swing for the fences that ultimately didn't cost you much, right? It cost you Robin Lopez, who, again, really liked him, but I did not think he was like a needle mover. Derrick Rose obviously has not, he did eventually become kind of a needle mover in some ways, but we at that time he hadn't been superstar Derrick Rose in a while. But
I feel like the big red flag for me for that trade was I don't remember if it was Doug or Miranda, but it was someone on PNT. It was one of the guys who are now at the Strickland. Wrote this article about how, like, even post injury, while Rose's stats had come back to solid levels, his free throw rate was like abysmal. Because he just wasn't seeking contact, and that was the big red flag, right? Because he's not obviously the same guy.
Right.
But yeah, to your point, like, it was for a team that was trying to do something around Melo, not a bad swing to take.
Yeah, I thought it was just a reasonable swing, and the thing that I liked about that trade is that it actually would have given them a quite a bit of cap flexibility, because if Rose didn't work out, he was an expiring contract, so you could just let him walk, and you'd have cap space. The problem is they traded Robin Lopez and then decided that they needed to sign Joakim Noah to 4 year, $72 million contract, which we outlined on our pod last Friday. So if you want to listen to that and you're not subscribed, and you can listen to me and Drew fucking rant about that. But yeah, I think Robin Lopez was a really good signing. He was a solid. It was not great. It was not spectacular. But like, if you remember when they signed Lopez, the big freak out was like they had missed out on Greg Monroe. Well, as it turns out, Robin Lopez ended up being a far better signing on a far better contract.
And it was kind of that evolution, right? Where defense matters more for centers than doubles, right? So
right.
That was the vision. Like, he's a better player, yeah.
Yeah, and he was just a fun fucking player to root for. He's like fun, he's easy to root for, and he's an unselfish teammate. And he's I think because he's so goofy off the court and in like a lot of his stuff, I don't think people appreciate it until you actually see him night after night. He's like a fiery guy. Like, he's like a very competitive guy.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that? There's this clip where he gets ejected, and he was like on the way to the tunnel, he's screaming, and then someone dubbed the Denzel voiceover from Training Day, where he's like, "I'm putting cases on all you motherfuckers. King Kong ain't got shit on me." And they can voice it over Robin Lopez. Is pretty great.
24-hour lockdown.
When he said shoe program, I actually thought, like, is there a program in prison where they have to make shoes? That's actually, I didn't realize solitary housing unit was a thing. But yeah, you can do that speech on a separate pod. But
Not the full speech though. But yeah, he was good. I liked him. I had that specific signing on my list, so can't disagree with that. All right, I have the next pick. This is the eighth pick, so we have three more. I will go with. I should have taken this much earlier. Maybe it should have been number one. I'm going to go with firing David Fizdale. Firing David Fizdale. I don't have much more to say other than that he was by far the dumbest coach I've ever watched. Probably not the worst Knicks coach because watching Larry Brown just sabotage the team because he wanted to get paid and get the fuck out was even more miserable. But he was the dumbest coach I've ever watched. He was clueless. He was terrible at his job. He, I don't know. I could point to. I know. There is not a single thing I could point to and be like, he did this thing well. He did nothing well. He was an awful coach. There is no accountability on the team. He was getting players into really shitty habits, and he somehow had the 2019-20 Knicks at 4-18 through 22 games, which if they maintained that pace would have had them finish with a worse record than they did the year before, when they finished 17-65, which tied the franchise worst mark and was the worst record in the league.
But wasn't it a rudderless roster?
Yes, gutted right out of this roster. He had them 4-18 with Julius Randle, who would go on to make All-Star teams and All NBA teams, as we discussed, and with Marcus Morris shooting 40% from three.
He started Alonzo Trier as point guard. He tried RJ at point guard.
He tried. The craziest thing about the Trier thing is he didn't try it even once in the preseason, and then for no apparent reason on opening night he was just like, "Fuck it, Alonzo Trier starting point guard." Fun fact about that: Knicks lost that opening game 120 to 111. Alonzo Trier was a -9 in that game in the first quarter and never played another second. So, shout out to David Fizdale. Lost every margin, lost a lot of games, got fired. Fuck him. And I hope that he coaches the Celtics one day.
Yeah, between David Fizdale and JD Vance, you got two people marrying Indian women that have caused you and me quite a bit of consternation.
Yeah, honestly, I think you could even just tie in firing Steve Mills to this too. Both those guys, getting them out when the Knicks did, and during the 2019-20 season, were so I'm gonna loop those in together. Firing Fizdale, firing Steve Mills. I don't even think I need to explain the Steve Mills thing. He literally had nobody advising him for like 2 weeks, and within that 2 weeks signed the Tim Hardaway Jr. contract, which they then immediately needed to move in 18 months later because Scott Perry came in and was like, this team sucks. Our plan should be to suck and open up cap space, and maybe we can get a superstar in 2019 or 2020. And so, yeah, they had to immediately pivot to trying to move off Tim Hardaway Jr.'s contract, which, they end up doing, as we outlined before. But, yeah, Steve Mills, not good at his job.
Yeah, I mean, Hardaway was they drafted him. They knew what he was. He goes to a place that had more competence, and he develops into a decent defender. And you're like, okay, we can bring him back to the same situation where we know he wasn't playing defense, right? I don't even think Tim Hardaway is a bad player. He's
had a really good career.
Yeah, he was important in that Pistons series. I think he's going to be an important loss for the Pistons this year. Yeah, I mean, what can you say about Fizdale, right? I think the first season he got a pass because they obviously were just, they were praying for that for KD and Kyrie. Doesn't happen. So there was a transitional period. Porzingis isn't playing. There was hope. He went to see Porzingis. I mean, I think Fizdale was known as like a players coach, right? He seems to be pretty universally liked. LeBron was obviously a fan. But it was, and this is why I think if they had hired Mike Miller, I wouldn't have been opposed to it. I wasn't. I think there were people who were like, Thibodeau is a retread, and there was a point when one of those years where I think they took off Brooklyn with like the whole Chicago Bulls roster falling apart, and Thibodeau got them to the second round with like Nate Robinson and Aaron Brooks playing point guard. I had one point said like he might be the best coach in the NBA over Pop, just because of what he's dealing with. I walked that take now. But I always had respect for Thibodeau, and people were like, we should have hired Kenny Atkinson and all that. I was never on that. But even then, if they had hired Mike Miller, I would have been fine with that. And part of that is just basic competence. Like, you wrote about this, right? Getting Frank Ntilikina in a backup role, but getting him minutes. I think you had a long piece about how the on-off and net rating had improved. And a big part of it was the seeds for Randall starting to be more comfortable, right? As an initiator, right? Not playing as a role man, but instead of Fizdale giving him the ball and them not having a clue what the fuck they're doing, Miller gave him some structure, and Thibodeau built on that, right? And we saw what happened. That low-hanging fruit, Fizdale didn't explore at all. RJ Barrett was a rookie, so we can give him maybe a little bit of a break there. I don't think RJ developed at all as a rookie, really, under Fizdale. He kept doing the Moutier thing, right?
Look, I like even the Knox thing. Like, look, I don't think Knox he's probably never going to end up being a productive player. But for him to come in and just be like, Knox can do whatever the fuck he wants, basically.
He's going to be Tatum, right?
Yeah, it was insane. It was like, what am I watching right now?
And yeah, let's not forget. I mean, he won like an Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month. He showed potential as a scorer. And if Fizdale was a bad fit for their I mean, I think they thought of him as a player development guy, and that just didn't come to fruition at all. Because if you looked at the strategy that Mills and Perry had taken, which I agreed with at the time, mostly because I liked the guys, they go after Nova Vonleh, they go after Mario Hezonja, they get Moutier, right? So these second draft guys were like, they're high picks. There's clearly talent there. Let's see if we can turn. That's what Brooklyn had done with D'Angelo Russell, right? Can we rehabilitate these guys and turn them either into trade chips or maybe even a piece for the future? None of that really happened, right? He didn't, he started Hezonja at point guard at the end. Didn't really smooth out those edges. Now you can say maybe these guys are always good. Vonleh showed enough promise where, I know Dallas is not going to like me bringing this up, but even Dallas wrote an article like, can Vonleh be a Blake Griffin type point forward? Obviously, that was never going to happen. But they had made some moves that you could turn one or two of them into something valuable. Never happened. So on basically every front, schematically towards winning, failed. Developing players internally, including someone who ended up being a multiple-time All-Star and All-NBA player, failed. So it was. I mean, the Knicks have had some tough coaching situations. I think that might be the worst. It's down there with Hornacek in terms of recent Knicks history. And Fisher, I guess. But Fisher was its own thing. And the Matt Barnes thing.
I mean, Fisher was not even... nothing is worse. Fizdale is just like... It's not even close, man. What a fucking awful coach.
Cool. 5th pick.
9th overall.
I don't think you're going to like this one. But as much as we talk about Mitchell Robinson, as much as we talk about Jalen Brunson, there is a guy that was pretty important in beating Cleveland, which is a huge step for this franchise.
This is before the 2020 summer. This guy was signed?
Not signed. It's a draft pick.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm going to get some backlash for this. But ultimately, I think RJ Barrett going 3rd ended up being good for this franchise. You can argue, well, they taken Garland. Well, they got Brunson and arguably quickly who have had good impact, right? So it's not like point guard sandbag them forever. RJ Barrett came in on the 2021 season. He shot upper 30s from 3. He was the second option on the starting lineup on a team that won 41 games in a shortened season. His contract probably was either net negative or neutral in terms of getting OGs. So I already said quickly was the main contributor to that, but it ended up being a useful salary. He contributed to wins. I do think they've always had good vibes, and him and Quickly and Grimes and all those guys developed together. So I'm going to go with picking RJ Barrett in a draft that ended up being not that great. And if you look at it now, the guys it looked like a 2-person draft. The first guy in that draft has had conditioning issues off the court. Well, I don't want to call it off the court issues, but there's been distractions. Let's put it like that. Has had struggles with his weight. isn't on the floor a lot, and the second guy has had off the court issues, right, and injury issues. So all in all, that was kind of it's juxtaposed with that Knox pick where they took kind of a home run swing when there were singles to be hit. I mean, I think Mikal Bridges would probably have been the consensus. I wanted MPJ because I didn't expect him to fall. I think I've talked about this. Like, I liked SGA a lot as a prospect, but I was still kind of hopeful for Frank. And I was like, you already have a 6'6" combo guard. Maybe they're redundant. Don't listen to me on draft after that. But yeah, I'm going to go with RJ. Drafting RJ.
Yeah, I'm not going to kill that too much. I would not have picked him just because.
In that draft or in this?
No. I mean, I wouldn't have picked him in that draft, but I don't want to say who I would have picked. Let's not talk about that.
Brandon Clark? I wanted Brandon Clark. Or I wanted to trade down and get Brandon Clark. But...
I wanted to trade down and get, I can't remember his name now. The Texas Tech kid.
Oh, you love Culver. I remember that. That wasn't I wouldn't kill you for that, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it just, I obviously, within like
months.
2 weeks, within like two fucking games of the season starting, I was like, yep, I think I fucked up on that one, man. But yeah, like he was kind of the consensus pick, right? I mean, nobody really thought anybody else was going to go third. Should the Knicks have taken Garland? Sure, in hindsight, like, yeah, they probably should have taken Garland. But like you said, like, ultimately it has worked out for the Knicks, right? Getting Brunson. And RJ was fine in his time here. And ultimately, like, the Knicks were able to, like, I still feel like they used quickly to get OG. But I also don't know if there was any world where they could just trade. Like, I guess if RJ was good, they could have traded him for OG. But if RJ was good, the Knicks wouldn't have wanted to trade him for OG. So ultimately, they were able to use his contract productively to get OG and Anunoby.
I mean, look at Jalen Green. It's worked out a lot better than that. I think that's dead money at this point. Like, they can't
the contract is better. Yeah, the contract was better for RJ, I think. But yeah, I would not have picked him. I'm not gonna spend too much time killing him just because, like, look, I think RJ was.
I mean, he was important to winning that Cleveland series, like, because Randall was hurt, couldn't create, and they obviously Brunson was the focus of their defense. That was, I mean, RJ had a good series.
Yeah, he did have a good series. And look, I think that he was not. I don't think he was ever the hard worker that he liked to portray himself as. I don't think that his.
Well, I think he worked on the wrong things, but
I just don't think he works that hard. So I think he was out of shape coming into seasons quite frequently. I think that what he felt he needed to do was not in line with what the team needed for him to do. And I feel like his focus was always very much on what was good for RJ Barrett versus trying to find a way to balance what's good for RJ Barrett and what's good for the Knicks. That's not our problem anymore. But he was like okay, is he going to be a Hall of Famer? No. But if your career outcome is RJ Barrett, like, if that's what you drafted, like, that's not some horrific all-time miss, especially not in that draft. I mean, go back and look at that draft. Like, fucking Zion was a generational prospect, and he's, fucking a Lay's, like a fucking half a sandwich away from being out of the league. So,
yeah, it's Garland, DeAndre Hunter,
and even Hunter. Who cares about Hunter? But yeah, it is what it is. So yeah, I'm not gonna kill you. I wouldn't have picked him, but it is what it is. All right, I have the last pick, and I am going to go with a move that is near and dear to my heart. The Kyle O'Quinn trade. Getting Kyle O'Quinn. Acquiring Kyle O'Quinn was a very, very shrewd move, and it cost the Knicks basically nothing. They gave up a second-round pick swap to get Kyle O'Quinn. He signed a 4-year, $16 million contract, which was effectively 3 years and $12 million because he had a player option at the end. And he was a really, really good Knick. Like, he had his best years in New York by far. He was... I don't even know what else to say. Like, he was really good. And to some extent, if they had probably just not signed Noah and just started Kyle O'Quinn, that might have, like, been really fucking good because him and Porzingis were quite good together. He was a creative passer, not a great passer. He kept shedding weight in his time in New York, which was good because he became more athletic and more capable defensively in space. He was a really good rim protector. He was a really good rebounder. Um, he was just a solid player. And again, like he had his best years in New York. And it was also an example of the Knicks like smartly scouting on the fringes of the league and finding an undervalued guy and getting him at a price. Like he was a restricted free agent. So they effectively like, I mean, you had to kind of give something to get him and make Orlando not match. And they got him for a second round pick swap. So really good signing. If anything, I guess like the one criticism you'd have has nothing to do with Kylo Quinn. It's that like they didn't cash in on him as a trade asset when they probably should have. But he was really good, Nick. He was clearly worth that contract. He was great value for the money in New York. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say because it's not again, there's a lot more bad in this decade than good. So this is like slim pickings when you get down to here. But I actually think this is he was just a really good signing, and it's sad that like this is one of the 10 best moves as far as I'm concerned of the decade for the Knicks, but it was actually a very good move. So I will go with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He was also fun. Like he was just with the passing, he was expressive but positive energy for the most part. Played well with their, at the time they viewed as the future of the franchise. I think rebuilding culture and all of that, you need guys like that, selfless team guys, put in the work. I think for a lot of people, he's from Queens, I believe. So that was cool for him to be back. I enjoyed Kylo Quinn. Let me ask you this: is it fair to call him Al Horford light?
Kind of, I think that's fair. I mean, very light, very, very, very light, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, he never shot. I remember I actually met him at he did one of these photo op things, and it was right next to where I worked. So I went to meet him, and I got a picture with him. I was like, "Yo, you're gonna shoot threes this year, right?" And he's like, "Man, get the fuck out of here."
Did he actually?
He's just like, "Man, get out!" Like he didn't curse, but he was cool. And he took the middies, right? Decent post game, underrated defender, right? Wasn't like switchable, but to your point, was reasonably mobile, good instincts to make up for the fact that he wasn't like some crazy. He wasn't 7 feet true. He was probably more like 6'10", and he wasn't like super athletic, but he was a good shot blocker. And yeah, I mean, for a team that just was desperate for good, competent players, that was a really good signing, and for good vibes in the locker room. So yeah, I think Kylo Quinn's a fine pick there. Are there
Honestly,
any?
I probably fucked this up. I should have had signing J.R. Smith. Probably should have been on this. I didn't include the Melo trade just because I think it's like that's its own thing, and we would have started debating like the fucking Melo trade and every which way about it. It's hard for me to call that one of the best moves when, in my opinion, they should not have traded for him and called him on his. I think he wanted to come to the Knicks. I think he was bullshitting that he was going to extend with the Nets, and I think even if he wasn't, they shouldn't have done the trade. So I would not call it one of the 10 best moves, even though I actually don't think the value they gave up is like that crazy for him.
What about trading for Tyson Chandler?
Yeah, I was going to say that's the other one. That's the other one, and I didn't pick that because I hate Tyson Chandler.
There's Tyson Chandler signing Jeremy Lin.
I don't know. Lin was just he was here for such a short time that I feel like it doesn't count.
But it was magic, Shwin.
Yeah.
He dropped 38 at Kobe in the Garden. I think I have fonder memories of Lin than many people. Yeah, I mean Tyson Chandler, you'd probably have to put up there.
I think it was, but
the Billups stretch.
It's really hard to like. Yeah, it's that era of like that Melo build era with Stat and everything. It's like because the original sin of like signing Stat and then doing the Melo trade kind of just like it almost, if you kind of look at it, you're like, was they already fucked then? Like, were they already fucked at that point? So it almost clouds the entire era. But like, yeah, I think the Chandler sign and I guess it was basically a signing trade. You could do the
Gallenberg and
I forgot whatever it was, and then that was good getting Tyson in the first place, and then the J.R. Smith signing because they got him from
They
China.
got Chris Smith too.
That was not so good. But they got him from China, and they were smart about it. They had kept open like the biannual exception. They did not use it, and they didn't use it almost specifically to get J.R. Smith. He comes, and he is good for them his first year. He was great for them his second year. He won Sixth Man of the Year. So honestly, it's probably a bad job by us to not include that as one of the 10 best moves. Because I mean, J.R. Smith was awesome to me, and I actually love J.R. Smith.
You're a fan of the pipe?
Not his pipe, and yeah, he was actually. I think that was the first jersey I had gotten of a Knick since Houston and Sprewell. So yeah, I didn't get anybody's jersey until J.R. Smith, and then I didn't get another jersey until Jalen Brunson. So yeah, it's that was definitely an oversight by us. But I just feel like that era is so, it almost feels like a separate thing. You know what I mean? It just feels like
I wasn't even thinking too much about that era, to be honest. Like them being good, I was thinking really the dark days, and then the beginning of the things that set up now. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to argue with Smith as a pretty good signing. Went on to win a championship, and maybe the most memed play in NBA history. But no, I mean, I think that's definitely, I think that probably deserved to be in there. I think Chandler had an argument. I would say it's just a decent, competent signing. He's nobody's favorite Knick. But again, as we're talking about, the era itself was pretty dark. Courtney Lee ended up being pretty fine. Didn't mind them. I think that worked out decently as a signing. It was funny you mentioned jerseys because I had a Sprewell jersey as a kid. I didn't buy one until I bought the Stoudemire jersey. Then I bought a Melo jersey. Then I bought a Porzingis jersey. So I still haven't bought a Jalen Brunson jersey because as soon as I bought all three of those jerseys, Stoudemire gets hurt. Melo is its own weird era. And then Porzingis got hurt and got traded. Right? So I think maybe it's better if I don't buy a Brunson jersey or a Cat jersey.
Depends if you want what you want. All right, I think that's a good place to end this. Stacy, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Nothing to plug. You can find me at StacyPatton89 on Twitter. Yeah.
Okay, I have nothing to plug myself, so I will plug all the way to Strickland. Thank you to everybody for listening, and thank you to our sponsor, FanDuel. And we will see you on Friday. Peace.